Welcome to the Grow with the Flow podcast, the ultimate destination for all things D2C and e-commerce. I'm Dove Karp and my co-host is Dave Silverman. And today's episode is brought to you by Chargeflow, the leading chargeback automation solution for e-commerce merchants. Now, imagine a world where chargebacks are no longer a headache, where you can focus on growing your business while Chargeflow handles the rest. With cutting-edge AI technology, industry-leading win rates, and unparalleled accuracy, Chargeflow is revolutionizing the way merchants manage disputes and recover lost revenue. Best part, Chargeflow only charges for recovered revenue. No monthly fees, no long-term contracts, no hidden costs, just instant ROI. Stay tuned as we dive into the latest trends, success stories, and expert advice to help you scale your store and take your e-commerce business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or looking to optimize your operations, Grow with the Flow and Chargeflow have you covered. Remember, when it comes to chargebacks, let Chargeflow do the heavy lifting so you can focus on what matters most, growing your e-commerce business. So give Chargeflow a try today. It's easy to get started and there is no risk or obligation. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome everybody to Grow with the Flow. Today I am super happy to be hosting Ben Jabbawy, and Ben is the co-founder of Grocers List, a commerce platform aimed at helping recipe creators grow and monetize their audience. Ben also runs Zero to Exit, a newsletter and investment fund focused on early stage SaaS companies where he shares insights on starting, scaling, and exiting Shopify apps. Previously, he founded and led Privy, a Shopify-focused email and SMS marketing platform, growing it to a 9-figure exit with Attentive while serving over 100,000 stores and driving more than $10 billion in sales. Welcome to Grow with the Flow, Ben.
It's awesome to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we're going to hop right in. What was the initial inspiration for Privy, and how did you kind of validate that there was a real market need?
Yeah. The early days of Privy were really like roundabout. I actually started it before I even knew what e-commerce was. And I had seen just a bunch of local businesses. We were originally targeting restaurants, salons, things like that. Mm-hmm. The theme that I saw was that there was a shift away from like small businesses hiring developers and agencies to build things to more of this desire for self-serve technology to market their businesses. And that was, the original thesis. And so with a small team, we were like, okay, let's provide tools that help these small businesses market themselves. I was trying to sell to restaurants and all these local businesses. I realized that it's really hard to get their attention because they're focused on this employee didn't show up to the restaurant today, and so they got to cover them, or they need a new furnace or whatever. And so we built a suite of tools for local businesses. It was interesting. We got to about 100,000 in revenue, but quickly realized there wasn't anything scalable there. And so started talking to folks and talking to customers, talking to our most active customers at the time. And one of them said, hey, this product's great, but like the way that I use it for my e-commerce store is one of the most valuable things I've ever seen. And so I spent some more time understanding what is e-commerce. This was early. This was like 2013, I think, at the time. I hadn't even heard of Shopify, but she was a retail store owner who had used us for the retail store, but also for her e-commerce store. And she said, hey, for my e-commerce store, it's growing really quickly. Growing my email list is one of the most important things to my business. And so that was like the first time I had someone that was using the product that actually would have been sad had we shut down the business. And so really started—
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
That's when you know it counts,
Exactly. So that was a great feeling. Spent some more time with her and understood, okay, there's actually this huge shift happening, and a new wave of entrepreneurs that are starting up that are actually sitting in a room with inventory thinking, how do I sell more inventory? And there were fewer distractions, and they were more digitally native entrepreneurs than the restaurant owners and salon owners. So there was something there. and looked at Shopify, looked at BigCommerce, looked at Wix, and there was a lot happening at the time. And we said, you know what, let's give this a shot and let's pivot the entire business to Shopify. That was our first kind of e-commerce integration. And that was the beginning of the real Privy story, where things really started to scale quickly for us.
You're talking about scaling. Like, what was your vision? So you got it to 100,000, but was there like a goal that you were kind of aiming towards? Was it like, we want to make 50 million, or
Honestly,
was it?
I was
Yeah.
so young and naive at the time. There wasn't a real vision. The vision was formed on the fly, and I think that's kind of a misconception. Um, maybe you have a really strong vision, or maybe you're just like me at the time, where you're like, you know what, I'm creative, entrepreneurial. I'm going to just see if I can get something to stick here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's an okay way to start a company. So when I started the business, I said, hey, if I could get to 1 million in revenue, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
definitely hear that.
And that was kind of what I was looking for. And certainly, like, the early inklings after we launched our Shopify app made me feel, okay, we would wake up, we'd go to sleep, we'd wake up. There were some more free users. There were a couple of new upgrades that we hadn't talked to. And I felt like, okay, there's something happening here. We just need to keep focused on the Shopify ecosystem.
So now that we're in the world of Privy and the early stages of the official digital model of that, especially with Shopify, like, what were some of the significant obstacles you faced in that beginning, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I was coming off of cold calling, direct sales, where no one wanted to talk to me. And I really just wanted to prove to myself and to the team that stood with me through the pivot that there was something here. And so a big part of that was going to market through a free version. A lot of the team at the time was like, why are we wasting our time with a free product? Why are you spending your time live chatting with free users? And that was definitely, an internal conversation we were having that, we didn't always agree on at the time. Another one was, you're just focusing on Shopify? This was from some investors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure? Like, is e-commerce a big enough market? And so everywhere I turned, there was doubts about what we were doing. But when you go from basically having no traction and all your prospects saying no to you and just deleting your emails and calls, to waking up with new customers without doing anything, and really active users that are asking you questions, that are asking for more features, you have something, even if other really smart people are doubting that.
So what did that free product look like, and how did you have the guts to put it out there? Because it's a discussion that I've been speaking with our own brand and many others about, like, is there some type of freemium model to put out there? And there's a concern. On one hand, it's, if your product's good enough, people are going to want to pay for it right off the bat, and if you're a good enough salesperson, or you're good enough whatever marketer, you should be able to just get people in the door, even paying high levels, because your product is so good and you're so great at your job. But you decided to choose to go the free way. You took the
Yeah.
freeway, So how does that? How did you go about that thought process, and what was the ROI looking like at that time?
I wanted to remove all friction from the sales process. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to create more value than we asked for in return. I wanted the time for that merchant to get value out of our product. I called it time to value, to be basically instant.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted all of that to happen without needing to talk to us. We were there for you, but you didn't have to.
You were thinking PLG before PLG.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always laugh at that word, because I'm like, to me, I don't think you can build software any other way. Because even in my own software buying habits, like I'm never going to buy something through a sales process. I always just want to create an account, play around with it, and see how it goes. And so that was the experience that I wanted to bring to market for Privy. I think it was reinforced by our core distribution was through the Shopify App Store at the time. And that really parlayed itself well because our free product was about growing your email list. And this was at a time where email marketing was starting to take off for Shopify stores, MailChimp, Klaviyo, et cetera. But none of the email providers had good email capture and growth tools. So we said, okay, this is going to be our free product. Let's be the absolute best at growing emails for Shopify stores. And let's make a free product out of that. And so that would bring us a lot of customers through the app stores. They would kind of install the app. We'd push the first campaign live. They'd be capturing leads before they even necessarily realized that they were live. And that distribution model through the App Store played really nicely with free because truly every single e-commerce store needs to grow their email list. So we said, okay, it should be free because it's also about winning market share as fast as we can.
And so when you were, the first, at least it sounds like the first couple customers or a bunch of customers, a lot of them were coming in through just the Shopify App Store. They were looking up, email list or email marketing or something like that. And they saw, hey, this is a free product. You know what? Let's try it out.
There was definitely some of that. I think a lot of that started to bubble up after I seeded certain communities. There were Quora threads about, growing your email list on Shopify. There were Facebook groups for Shopify owners. And I would kind of look through there, and anytime someone posts about growing their email list, I'd be in those communities, like seeding it. And then in the Shopify forums, I don't know if those still exist, but I'd be searching those as well. So there was definitely like me seeding it and talking about, hey, like there's a free version of it. So, I'm looking for feedback and all that stuff. And then that started to really work. And then we started to get really, really good at distribution through the Shopify App Store as well. Massaging our listing to win search terms. This was early days of the Shopify App Store, so it's a different story. But, we started to do that and see a lot of momentum coming through the Shopify App Store.
Wow. So within this now growing company, right? When you looked at your first several, I guess, key hires, like what type of qualities did they have or skills did they have, especially in kind of a quick growing startup that you saw and you needed? For example, I was speaking with one of the team members here, one of the C-suite people, and we were talking about the hires, and they were talking about the importance of having somebody who has kind of they don't need much direction. It's kind of like they should be able to kind of figure it out with a little bit of guidance here and there, but they need to have that internal skill at this stage. Like it's not because there's a lot of things we're still trying to figure out. What type of qualities were you looking for, especially towards the beginning in that scaling period?
Yeah. So the first iteration of Privy before we found e-commerce, I think almost every one of my initial hires failed. Then once we started to get traction inside of Shopify, it was amazing how easy it was to hire because at the time we had a few developers who stayed with me through the pivot. That was awesome. And myself. And so for me, because we started to get momentum in distribution and I was doing all of the support, I saw that support drove upgrades. And so it was very clear usage and momentum and user growth basically told me I need help with live chat support. And because I had done that role myself, it made it very clear to me on the type of person that I needed to hire. And I do agree with what you were saying about like self-directed, because ideally I could bring someone in, give them a little bit of guidance, but then they could own that process and figure it out better than I did. And so my first two hires outside of engineering as we started to get traction were around support. And then I kind of stepped in at that point and did most of the sales myself. It was like support-led sales, and if it required, I'd get on the phone and they'd pass it to me from support. And then over time, I realized, okay, now it's time to bring in someone on the sales side in a similar kind of way where I was doing it and I kind of knew a little bit of what I was looking for, and let's bring someone else in here that has a little bit more experience with inside sales.
Do you think as an entrepreneur, it sounds like a lot of entrepreneurs have the initial abilities, kind of like they're like a Swiss Army knife where they can do a lot, even to the extent maybe some start off as kind of developers themselves, and then they go into, like you're saying, customer service, if you will, and then sales. And then when you kind of start feeling like, oh, I'm getting a little overwhelmed by doing this because I have other things to do, let me hand that off. It sounds like maybe there's a certain type of person, like you have to be a Swiss Army knife as an entrepreneur, or maybe that's not necessarily the case. What are your thoughts about that?
I think someone on the team needs to just be a figure it out person. I would say the nature of most developers is that, right? They know how to take an idea and build a solution for it. But I think for the go-to-market side, which is what I tend to cover, sales, marketing, support, you just have to have someone that tinkers and is willing to like build the website themselves and write the copy themselves and send cold DMs themselves, like whatever it takes to move the ball forward. So I would agree with that, but obviously there's very different team structures and entrepreneurs, and some people might just be an idea person and like to have someone else on the team that is the kind of Swiss Army knife. But I do think every team needs, one of those.
Yeah. You're also talking about becoming the first salesperson in the org, right? And then at some point flipping that off to someone else. And this is talking about, as we discussed, you think, should every company be built this way? Product-led growth. So when do you start converting and saying, I'm going to step in as sales? For what kinds of deals do you do that? And also, do you see that as an issue? Because if the product is running well, is there an actual need for a salesperson?
I think there always is. I think product-led growth, whatever you want to call that, works to a degree for I just think of it as self-serve, right? So a customer can learn about what you're doing, can get to initial value, can get to a point where they're comfortable upgrading without talking to a human. But if you expect them to be able to figure out all the nooks and crannies and all the creative ways that they can use this product without human intervention, I think that's kind of foolish. You'd have to be unbelievable at product and onboarding and all that stuff. And none of the teams I've been involved with ever achieve that, right? And so the question is, okay, if that's the case, then how do you do it? And so I think it's kind of this like support-led sales process, which has components of marketing. You're notifying users about new features. You're doing a webinar, educating them about some of these new features. Or in my case, like I'm also doing outreach to prospects and existing users to get them understanding the full value of the platform. So I just think self-serve, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't have some component of support-led sales on top of a self-serve product.
Can you dive into that a little bit more about support-led sales and give some maybe some examples of how that works?
Yeah. So the greatest moments of the Privy journey for me, and even now my new business that I'm building, were when you're actually running a sales process. You're reaching out to people cold. You're explaining how your software is better, how it's going to help them. make more money, or, do whatever it is. And they are thanking you after the call, right? And so, I have no doubt that we could have grown revenue faster at Privy, or even now I could probably grow revenue faster at Grocers List. But the tone of the sales call is support. And that way it's easier to get those calls. It's easier to close those deals. And back to my point about removing friction, that was my goal with Privy in the early stages of our growth. And I think that really did wonders, right? So if someone writes into live chat support, rather than just like get back to them quickly and point them to a help doc, which we certainly do from a scalability perspective, sometimes I might have just said like, hey, do you want to just jump on a Zoom real quick for 15 minutes? I can show you how this works. And so to the end user, to the merchant in that case, the Shopify merchant, that was kind of a pleasant surprise to them, right? Because, here's a founder of the app that I'm trying that's willing to get on the phone and explain how this thing works. That was amazing for us. It did wonders.
We do bring him into calls.
That's true. That's true. I was just saying we should talk to our founder and be like, hey, just have him hop in on. But you know what would actually be amazing is actually I'm throwing him under the bus already, but to have him just once in a blue moon, just hop in to like a customer success thing or something like that.
So I can say our founder, Ariel, does do this. I don't know how he is with success. We're on the sales team, and when I'm closing certain clients, he'll get on the call. And I'll be like, Ariel, I think it'll be helpful to have you talking to the COO of this publicly traded company, and he'll join us and he'll be part of the pitch. I'll share decks with him beforehand. He is active. He is hands-on. I think it shows a lot of responsibility from the company side that we stand behind our products, and, you can reach anybody internally because we want everyone to succeed and with the product that we created and they're using. And that human touch of accessibility, especially when we're talking about someone's business on the other side, like I've invested everything into this and you're putting me in touch with your salesperson. Minimum, allow me to have access to the salesperson. Once I know that I also have access within an org to the CEO and that people are hands-on with me and guiding me along this journey, that's when I don't need to be on top of it. That's when I know I can trust the company that I'm working with. So it says a lot.
I totally agree. There was a point in time, I don't know if he's still doing this, where Harley from Shopify would take customer support calls regularly.
There are companies that everyone in a company, it's not, the names of the brands aren't coming to my mind right now. Everyone from president to C-level, VPs, everyone has to take X amount of time on support calls just to keep in touch with what's actually going on from the bottom level. What are the holes? What are people not understanding? What am I missing from the customer side so I can build this product better for them? Because, right, no one's building a product. I'm not building the product so that I can use it. That's not going to scale. We're talking about building something for the client. So getting that touch with them, being client facing, no matter where you are in the org, critical for growth.
Yeah. The other kind of hidden benefit to what we're talking about here, especially if it's one of the founders, is that the learnings you walk away with from support interactions around how to build a better product are unmatched. And I hate to say it, but once the founders step out of product entirely, it's very rare that the customer success and customer support teams are heard as loudly by the product org as when it's the founder doing that. And so I think for me, like even right now, I'm doing almost all the support for my new business because it's just the best way to learn. It's the best way to build a better product.
That's all your client feedback. They're telling you what to build. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
So if we're going to transition a little bit now deeper into kind of the world of connecting and emails, right? nowadays everybody is so bombarded with emails. I know it used to be, 10 years ago, everybody would open up almost every email that they got and they're like, oh, what's going on over here, right? It's no longer the case. Everybody's being bombarded with all these different types of emails. So we keep on talking about personalization and making sure that there's relevant content and adding value. What advice would you have to give through kind of, I guess, what would you consider the most effective segmentation strategies when it comes to email lists and ensuring you have personalization and it's relevant? Like, how would you go about that?
I've been out of the Shopify merchant game for a little while, to be frank. I haven't looked at segmentation in a while, so I'm definitely not the person to ask for that. I will say that most people overcomplicate the issue. If it were me, I would just set up the types of emails that actually match up with the customer kind of events, right? Adding something to the cart, but not buying, completing an order, joining the email list for the first time, right? Just like super simple, basic welcome series, educating the brand, product launch, out of stock notifications. Like all the automations I think are brilliant and don't need to be overthought. The concept of audience of one to me, I think is still kind of marketing BS. I know there's like a bunch of AI and stuff happening around this, and I hope that it gets there. But if I'm interacting as a buyer with a Shopify store, I don't know that I need a story from them every week that's specific to me, So I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been out of it, but that's my
I want to just, from your perspective as a person who had a lot of experience in that, how do you like receiving, I guess, kind of emails? What makes you open something? And especially maybe from a little bit of a cold outreach type perspective, because if you're already warm and you're already in the system, it makes it a little bit easier. But a lot of companies are trying to kind of just open the front door, which is very difficult. And from your own personal, experience, like what stands out to you?
Yeah. I think the best lesson I learned in selling anything, whether it's software or a t-shirt or a product, is you need to explain to the person that you're reaching out to why them and why them now. And so I like to bring that to email marketing, which is like, okay, we're emailing you because you just joined our newsletter for a 10% off pop-up. So, okay, I'm going to explain, welcome, thanks for signing up, remind them of the coupon code. Here's a little bit more about us, right? Or I'm emailing you because you added this product to the cart, you didn't buy it, and there's only 10 in stock, right? Like those are great reasons to reach out. If I've done nothing, if I've shown you no intent and you're emailing me, I'm deleting that, there's no relevance to me. So whether that's on a Shopify store or through a software SaaS sales process, I like to bring that concept of like, why you now?
And when it comes to the world of SMS, right? Sometimes we feel it's very, at least I know, it feels a little more intrusive. Like it's one thing, I guess society has kind of gotten to the point where like, I know I'm going to get something in my inbox. Okay, fine. All of a sudden, I now have some marketing email or SMS, in my phone next to my mom and my wife and, a friend of mine. It can feel off. So what are some ways in which you can kind of, I guess, make it feel more personal, relevant to you? Yeah.
I think it's just the same concept, but the rule's even more strict for SMS, right? Like,
like opt-in only, that type of thing.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, if you're even exploring anything else, I would just be very careful. I also don't think this concept of like a weekly newsletter that exists on email or, a monthly send like, I don't think you can get away with that stuff on SMS. I think it needs to be a fraction of the volume that you're sending through email, you send through SMS. And it has to be even more relevant to that concept of like, why is this person getting a message through text, and why are you sending it right now? And if you don't have a good reason for that, you can't send an SMS.
Yeah, I get a lot of SMS, and I don't even open it.
Interesting.
To the exception of one. There's one company when stores are doing it very well. It's
Who
an
is it?
alcohol brand, and more a store, right? So they got a bunch of different bottles, and they'll send me like a thing of their weekly deals, and the headline is "White wines for $10. Check out the rest of our weekly deals." I'm not getting too much more than that. And it's something that I'm interested in. And this is
Yeah.
something I heard a while ago where people don't mind being marketed to.
Yeah.
People like to be marketed to, right? I want to know how I can get the good stuff that I want at a good price. People hate being marketed to with products that are irrelevant to them.
Yeah.
So if we're keeping that relevancy in place, a lot of times, if we're talking about how to do a good cold outreach, or more correctly, as you were mentioning in your scenario, like an inside sales outreach where someone reached out to you, you're doing support-led sales, hitting it when it's hot, getting back to them, you see that they just installed, you see that they just went through their first demo flow on your platform, calling them then, emailing them then, right?
Yeah.
So it's that cause-based outreach.
Yeah.
To then start getting into a conversation, that's like why and why now are answered perfectly. So that's really
Totally.
nice.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you have
I think
examples? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that concept of timeliness is so critical to me when you're building a business. I mean, now building a vertical SaaS company, when I try to get back to people in minutes through support, because there's a lot of wow factor when that happens. And you're capturing a moment in time where if you don't get back to them in minutes, did you lose them if it's a day later? Like
100%.
the decision to buy your product or use your software can come down to a matter of minutes when someone has time to think about this and try a new platform. And if you miss that, that's an issue. So I take that really seriously, how fast we get back to people.
So now that you're kind of like back into growing this new product, Grocers List, can you tell us a little bit about it? You've transitioned from Privy into other areas and investing, and now you're kind of back in the saddle. I would love to hear about this kind of new journey that you're on.
Yeah. So after Privy got acquired, I spent some time at Attentive. That was awesome. And then my family and we took some time off. We did some travel. We got back after that, and we cook a lot at home. I love to do grocery shopping and stuff like that. And we find a lot of our recipe inspiration from social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And as my wife runs a local business here in Boston, so she went back to work, and I was doing a lot of the cooking at the time. And I started engaging with a lot of these recipes and realizing, wow, there's actually a lot of technology vendors involved in the recipe stack, in terms of like they're using WordPress websites. There's social tools like ManyChat. There's link in bio tools. There's email marketing tools like ConvertKit. But I found that none of them were actually focused 100% on food and food creators. And so as a result, there's basically no innovation in the food creator space. There's no commerce. And
What do you mean by those? There's no commerce.
Think about what's happened to us as consumers over the last 10 years, right? I'll have 3 or 4 Amazon packages show up at my house this week. I will probably do 1 Instacart order or Amazon Fresh grocery delivery that will show up to my house this week. I might have an order from a Shopify store show up this week, right? So there's so many conveniences as consumers, DoorDash, right? But when you look at the process of going from here's a recipe on Instagram that I've decided I want to cook to what does it take to like capture the ingredients of those recipes on your phone or a sticky note to actually like entering those into Instacart or going to the market and buying those.
So there's a lot of friction between each step.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so as I looked at it, I thought, wow, okay, there's a lot of concepts here from Privy that are super relevant. There's also a lot of commerce concepts here from Shopify that are super relevant. And there's no software brand that is leading the industry forward. And so that was kind of the original thesis. This one actually does have a thesis. And I think it's huge. And we're really just a freemium vertical SaaS software just for food creators that's bringing some marketing tools and some commerce tools to the table.
And how do you know when to transition from freemium to paid, right? Because I've used tools that the freemium model is so pointless that I don't actually get any real value from it. And the only way I can actually get value is if I pay whatever. And oftentimes I'm just like, forget it. It's not even worth it.
Yeah.
Then there's other tools that kind of give away everything, the whole farm. And then I'm just like, I've been using this for 1,000 years and I'm never going to actually pay for the premium model because it does everything I need. Where's that line?
I think Evernote was a good example of what you just described. It was like all these people that used it for free. It was like such a great product at the time. And they never really like focused on converting, or they never did a good job. I think it's more of an art than a science, at least how I approach it. And I'm of the camp that you really need to use your free product as distribution and word of mouth. But it also has to convert, right? And so with Privy, I mean, I have no clue what their conversion rate is now. I'm not really involved in the business anymore, but we used to convert about 15% of free users to paid. I was very happy with that.
What's that considered?
What do you mean?
For benchmarking, is that considered a good conversion rate?
For a free to paid, absolutely. If it was a trial to paid, it would be low. Like typical trial conversion rates can be over 30% from trial to paid. But if you look at like Spotify, that was someone that we looked at, even though they're consumer, they used to convert about 5 to 10% from free to paid. So I mean, it really depends. But we were very happy with that. I think initially on this one, again, when you're going from 0 to 1, you need to prove that that you're solving value, solving pain to the customer. To me, that happens with revenue, but it also happens with adoption. And you as the founder need to figure out how to convince yourself that there's something here. Yes, revenue growing like crazy, absolutely, that helps. But for me, I also look at, okay, are people adopting the free version of this? Are they getting value out of that? And then over time, you can figure out where the right line is between free and paid. But it's very hard to do, and it's never going to be perfect.
It's a trial and error kind of process.
Yeah, definitely. This one, we're converting more closer to like 50% of our customers are on paid. And so, I'm being maybe a little bit less generous on this one than we were for Privy. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's still too early.
It might be different, D2C or /B2C and B2B. Even if this is like a creator, I would still see them as a singular entity, and then it's a B2C status, and also on deliverables, right? The more features you have is one thing compared to shipping product, right? If you're sending out a kit with precise spices and basil and whatnot, compared to shipping whatever the feature is to the client. And then I was also thinking that depending on how many features you have to offer, it makes it easier to change freemium to paid.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good point. It took me a while to realize this, but it's nice when your pricing plans have two axes to them. So some free plans will be capped on usage, but they include all the features. And so if you hit a certain usage, then you have to move to paid. That makes sense. Others are, hey, the free plan includes these features, the paid plans include these features. And so if you need more advanced features, you got to pay. I like the combination of both of those, where there's some feature levers and then there's some usage levers as well. That's kind of, we're still exploring all this right now for the new business.
So for this new venture, did you raise capital for it yet, or is it like what's the first financial component of that?
So I blog a lot about this, or I did. I'm not really blogging much lately, but on Zero to Exit, talked a lot about capitalization as a founder and the benefits and some of the risks and the hurdles that you need to keep in mind before fundraising. One of those is just a rule of thumb of like, hey, for every dollar of capital you raise, you need to have a liquidity event for about 10 times that for everyone to make out the way you want. You as the founder, your team, your investors, et cetera. I'm not anti-capital. I did raise about $1 million for the new business. And I feel very good about that because the other kind of thing that I think about is the amount of capital raised to the ARR, the run rate that you achieve having raised that capital. So I try to keep that ratio as close to 1 as possible. That made the Privy outcome unbelievable for us at the time. And that's kind of how I think about it here. So, can I raise $1 million to get this new business off the ground? Can I ideally get it to over $1 million in ARR off of that fundraise?
And in how long off the amount of time versus how long? And how long typically would that run rate you think should last?
Every journey is different. Privy, it took 5 years to get to $1 million in ARR, right? Like we were like such an ugly company from a fundraising perspective. No one wanted to do it. We were so slow growing in the beginning. Like it was really hard to fundraise. And then we went from $1 million to 10 million in ARR very, very quickly with very little capital. And I'm very thankful that we had a hard time fundraising because it meant that we had a great outcome because of all these things. We're moving much faster this time. And, we'll see. We're not at $1 million ARR. We'll see how long it takes to get there, but probably about 2 years is my prediction from start. And, now that it's my second time, it's nice that I've seen things as Privy. I know what real looks like. I know what growth looks like. It's also great that I've invested in a lot of founders in the Shopify SaaS ecosystem because I have a bunch of experience to pull from. And, it's not a race, but certainly I'm trying to move as fast as I can because I do think urgency matters both for your team internally. And you just never know how the landscape changes over, a 2 or 3 year horizon. So the faster you can move, the faster you can put new product in customer hands, the faster you can grow, and the better off you are.
So what type of, what did you learn from the pitch process, both as a person who has pitched and who has been pitched? What really works for you and what stands out?
As if you decide to raise money, you as the founder need to know more about your customer, your market, objections to buying than anyone else, right? Because investors are smart. They're going to ask good questions, and you need to be so confident in why you know more than not to be an asshole. You're not trying to be an asshole, but like confidence comes from data. Confidence comes from 100 customer conversations, right? That no one else is having. There's no way an investor is having that level of conviction around something. Or if they have that many conversations, that's probably a great investor. And a little bit of healthy debate is a good thing from an investor. I have that even now for my investors, and I love that because it pushes me. But you need to be convinced through your own customers and data. So that's one. I would never fundraise if I didn't feel like I've had 100 customer conversations and see it in the data and know that there's something real here.
So you're talking about customer conversations. So that begs the the question. So I guess you need customers before you should start.
Model. It's a very different model than these big software companies that we're seeing out here. And there are a lot of people that will say, let me ask a different question. You're talking about having customers, you're raising money to scale just for the speed, but it's not even for the build. Am I getting that right?
No. I mean, we raised money before we had a bunch of revenue,
But did you have some revenue?
We did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, keep in mind, I sold Privy for a lot of money. It's very different fundraising.
I want to tell you real quick. I was once listening to somebody who was raising money, and they gave this whole entire thing about this is how you should pitch, and this is how blah, blah, blah. And then they told the background, and they're like, and make sure you have a good team, because one of our co-founders sold their company for $50 million. Another one was like a VP at Facebook and whatever. I was like, oh, thank you for all your amazing pitch things. But the fact that you already did this, it's like,
how do you do it the first time,
but
right?
Yeah. But look, I understand, what really, you said something, it was confidence. It seems like if a person really knows, their customer, they know their industry, they know their product, they know it, and they exude this, you said not being an asshole, but this confidence, is that kind of what you're looking for? That spark, that like, not just they know it, but there's this like confidence, and therefore you can trust them. Like, wow, this person, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. I published all the fundraising decks that I used at Privy for each of my rounds on my blog, Zero to Exit. So check that out. If you look at those decks that were successful, I led with traction, charts, right? Mm-hmm. I closed with traction, right? Number of merchants using Privy, amount of annualized recurring revenue that we had. Like, my confidence came in fundraising from irrefutable traction. It's not always going to be that you've got $1 million ARR and you're hockey sticking. Like, that's not realistic. But as a founder, your confidence has to come from traction. That could be you got to 100 free users and usage from those users is growing like crazy. That could be qualitative from 50 phone calls with prospective customers. But there has to be some amount of traction that you can point to, and that's where your confidence comes from in the fundraise. I also, one of the most powerful concepts I learned in fundraising was this concept of pitch decay, which is if you're on a Zoom or you're at a coffee meeting or you send someone a deck, tomorrow they're going to forget everything about that except for one thing. So how do you architect your deck or your story or your coffee meeting to have that one key takeaway be something that you control? For me, in my fundraises, I always wanted that to be traction, right? Even if you didn't believe Shopify was a big enough market, even if you thought email marketing was boring and done 1 million times and there was no room for it. When you walked away after reading one of the Privy decks, you saw basically chart after chart of growth, usage, merchant count, revenue, whatever it was. And so, like, even if you didn't believe in the story, you had to just remember, wow, there's a lot of growth happening there. Like, maybe I should actually look closer at this.
And how much, all right, now within the world of an investor, there's, for lack of a better term, there's smart money and there's dumb money. At least that's how I've been told, right? You have the the people who are going to be involved, and then the people who are just giving the money and walk away. As a founder and as an investor, what do you think about the approach? Where should an investor be? And should a person look for specifically like money that is going to have some type of connection or relevance behind it?
Smart money is going to ask you questions as a founder that don't waste your time. Smart money is going to put cleaner terms on the table that won't have horrible impacts to you as a founder, ideally. Smart money is going to have a network. Smart money might make customer intros, but for me, I'm more of we target small business. That hasn't necessarily been the case. So I think that there is value in smart money. But then on the other side of the coin, like, there is dumb money. And as long as it doesn't come with horrible terms and they don't really like distract you as a founder, I think it's fine too. Mm-hmm. So not every founder can raise smart money, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good point. And then so I know we only have a couple more minutes to go. We got 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah. I got to jump in like 2 minutes.
Okay. So then let's end with this one. You had this exit with Privy. How did your life change, and how did it not change?
Changed in so many ways. I mean, I don't want to sound like an asshole here, but it was a life-changing outcome. There was pressure from my existing investors to keep going and not to sell. I am so glad that we sold, for the financial reasons, but also just as a relatively young founder with a full exit under my belt. It is impossible to describe the opportunities that open up to you after that happens. When you take something from zero to meaningful outcome, the world is your oyster. You can come up with new ideas. You can go do investing. You can disappear and build a farm. I mean, there's a lot that you can do. And I'm very thankful for that. So my life changed in a lot of ways. And I have zero regrets about selling the business.
And was there any way that it didn't change? Meaning you're like, wow, okay, this is still the same.
I mean, I am a family-oriented person. I was married to someone amazing. I had 2 young girls. Family's my priority. And that has remained the same even after the fact. So in a lot of respects, nothing has changed and a lot has changed at the same time.
What would be your biggest tip to young founders or someone interested in starting their own company?
I'll give advice that Jason Lemkin puts out online. He's one of my favorite mentors that I've never actually spoken with. He told me, and this motivated me through dark times at Privy, if you can get to 10 customers, you can get to 100. If you can get to 100 customers, you can get to 1,000. If you can get to 1,000 customers, you can get to 10,000. Privy, when we sold the business, we had about 20,000 paying customers. If you told me that was going to be the case when I first started the business, I would have said you're crazy. And I don't know how to do that. But it's all about just one milestone, 1 foot in front of the other. And those are the signals to look for to know that you can keep going.
That's amazing. Well, Ben, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time. Where can the audience find you?
You can just find me at Jabbawy on Twitter, or grocerslist.com is my new business that I'm building if you want to check it out.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you to our audience for listening. We really look forward to bringing you practical advice about how to grow your D2C brand. Please follow, like, and subscribe to the Grow with the Flow podcast, and feel free to reach out to Chargeflow at chargeflow.io for all your chargeback needs. Until next time, keep flowing.